Good day, everyone. Guten Tag, bonjour, buenos dias, buongiorno. Welcome to a discussion on the future of audiobooks in Europe. I'm Christopher Keneally, host of The Spoken World, a podcast on global audiobook news, insights, and trends. And honestly, I think they ought to call it the Frankfurt Audiobook Fair. The robust programming today in the Frankfurt studio makes evident the rising strength of audiobooks in book publishing around the world. The European audiobook market is growing rapidly, with millions of new listeners discovering the format every year. And what content is drawing them in such numbers? The answers vary by country. The French like a good laugh, Italians love adventure, and Germans want to know who done it. Those are the key findings of the Audible Compass, an annual review of listening habits commissioned by the world's largest audiobook retailer and conducted by the market research institute Varian. Looking beyond consumer engagement with high-quality content, game-changing new technologies in the early stages of transforming the audiobook landscape, especially the prospect of narration and translation enabled by AI. Three leaders from the audiobook field from across Europe share the stage with me now to discuss the latest data and trends in listener behavior, as well as the opportunities for publishers to grow readership through the audiobook format. And joining me from the far end here, from Berlin, is Barbara Knaber. Barbara, welcome.
Thank you, Chris, for being here. Nice to be here.
Barbara Knaber is Head of Content Acquisition EU and Latin America at Audible. And from Copenhagen, we have Lasse Korsemann-Horner. He's the Publishing Director with leading digital book publisher Saga Egmont. Lasse, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
And to my right from Munich, Dr. Anke Suzanne Hoffmann. Anke, welcome. She is Director of Strategy and Digital Management Audio at Penguin Random House. And we're all looking forward to the discussion here. But Barbara, I want to start with you, and I want to hear more about the Audible Compass and what you've learned from that. It was a survey conducted in a number of different countries. Tell us about that and who was involved.
Yes, well, with pleasure. Honestly, I'm happy to share what is more or less our everyday business. But the Audible Hörkompass, we conducted this survey this summer for 4 weeks, and we interviewed listeners and not Audible customers in 9 marketplaces. So this is, and we asked them, and the age of this, let's say, audience was between 18 and 65. And we put together really a lot of data, and now we can better understand, let's say, what the customers listen to, what they're interested in, how and when and why. And I'm happy as well to share a bit, let's say, talk about the consumption patterns, which are different. For sure, there's a common ground. And I would also like to get a little bit deeper into the different categories, genre. I think there are some nice and interesting insights I would like to share with you. First of all, but let me mention, having all these numbers seen and questioned and discussed internally, there are 2 key messages I would like you to keep away from this, let's say, panel. First of all, we have the privilege to work in a category which is growing again and again. So this is the first one. The second one, what we have seen in the Audible Hörkompass or Compass, is there's a positive interaction and relation between reading and listening. So please keep this away of the room. It's really not a substitution. It's not neither nor. The consumption behavior and pattern it's an end. People who love stories don't care whether it's listening or reading. So these are 2 things which are important to me. But coming to more concrete results in terms of consumption, there are different situations when people are listening and as well how intensive. And the numbers I right now sharing are coming from this survey. So let's start what is typical for the Germans. The Germans are really the ones with the highest consumption. They really like to listen to stories when they're commuting. But in the same way and the same extension also as the Spaniards. So it's nearly 50% of the people we asked are listening to audio content when they're commuting. Another one, and this is for sure the even bigger portion of listening time, is at home. And at home, we can specify also, is it to relax, is it to do homework, whatever you are doing. Again, the Germans are super high. More than 70% of the interviewed persons in each marketplace, 1,000 person we ask. They said they are listening to audiobooks. So 70% is really a lot. When it comes to relax, it's a little bit different. It's 50% of the German, 40 in France. It's again the strongest category. And the last one I really like is when it comes to fall asleep also. People are consuming audio content. And I don't know why, but the Germans really consume a lot of audio content when they would like to fall asleep, much more than the Italians. So Italy is with a 90% consumption in the evening to fall asleep, and just to compare with the Germans, it's more than 30%. Maybe we need to discuss this with some of my Italian partners, but I think it's an interesting number. This is the situation which differs, but there are also other, let's say, consumption patterns. What I very much liked, and I think it's a big topic for all of us and a big opportunity in front of us, is the answer from the Spaniards when it comes to openness to audiobooks. So the Spaniards are super open to test and get to learn new authors, new stories, new categories via audiobook. Again, there's no cannibalization. We heard also, especially from the Spanish person we interviewed, or the Verian interviewed, that after listening to an audiobook, they are also willing to buy the physical book. So it's really a very fruitful relation between these two categories. Other consumption patterns, and I think this is something also interesting for us, the narrator is key for selecting an audiobook. And again, especially for the Germans, if they are once connected and fixed by a special narrator, really people are consciously looking for an audiobook narrated by this person. But this also applies also for other marketplaces. When we talk about genre, and I guess it's also interesting for you because it was also a big part of our survey, there's also a common ground. And now, I think it's not a surprise, it's mainstream because it's mainstream. And one of the key genres in this area are the mysteries, the thriller, the crime ones. So people want to be scared, and especially the Germans. Don't ask me why. They have, even though, a tendency to horror. So this is the common ground in terms of genre, and for sure there are then some specific nuances per culture, per marketplace. In common, we do see also, and I think it's in the air, it's also part of our brand campaign at the moment, this is romance. It's a plus 50% last year in terms of consumption. It's great. The differences are, so it's quite easy, and now just very shortly, in Germany, in France, and even though in Spain, the core category is mystery, thriller, crime. Not in Italy. So it's on the same level. The Italian also like the literary fiction. And I think this is very specific and very interesting as well to understand this market. So literary fiction is strong there to make it very easy. The Germans like really the scary part, the bloody part. The French prefer more thriller, more crime. Crime is stronger than thriller. And they would like to balance the suspense by romance. As well, not a surprise maybe, because of France. The Spaniards are really mainstream. It's mainstream in mixture with young adult and teens. So these are some genre insights we have figured out. Just to finish this by non-fiction, because I think it's also a very interesting category. Sometimes it's not so much in the focus, but it's important and it's growing. There are a lot of opportunities, but the challenge here is to get this really a deep understanding because it's so fragmented. There are so many subcategories and topics and which one is the right one to go into audio. What we do see as well, the common ground here is one of the core genres is health and well-being. In Italy, it's politics and science, also memoir and biographies are very, very strong, stronger than in the other marketplaces. The French really care about social relations in terms of non-fiction. I think that's also interesting. The Germans also like self-improvement and politics. Yes, well, I think this, I can't stop. Yeah, there are so many insights. But just to finish here.
So thank you, Barbara, for that. That's a really comprehensive view of the European marketplace. And Anke Hoffmann, I want to ask you about what you think accounts for the strength of audiobooks in the German-speaking marketplace. How do we have this culture of listening so much?
Yeah, as Barbara has already mentioned, Germany is a heavy listening country, and it's an asset we all in the industry can build on. And I think when we look back, we have a strong legacy in listening, and it all starts with a German speciality, so to say, with the audio drama or the radio play. So now 100 years ago, and this is something I think that we have this strong legacy in listening to stories. That's something that carries on, and we see it still today. And we talked a lot about the genre, and yes, the Germans love crime and they want to know who did it or who died, yeah. But I think it's also something with getting back to the dramatized versions. We also have a strong legacy in children's content in audio. So because I grew up binge listening to cassettes with Bibi Blocksberg, Benjamin Blümchen, and all these kids' characters, and that's still something we see today. So maybe some of these characters are still around, others are new, and are today the main characters in the field. But we have really something that starts on an early age, and it's really important to get these young kids into audio, to develop listening habits, to build up trust in the format. And I think that's something that's unique in the marketplace in the EU, that we have this early age listening, and that's for a century now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what about the age demographics for your audiences? Tell us more about that. Does it tend to be more one category or another?
So I would say in the demographic, that's difficult to say, because we see that we have listeners over all age groups, honestly, and it's not a complicated question, but there is no simple answer, because it depends on the platform. Yeah, we see that on one platform, the listeners are younger because of the environment. Maybe it's more music-driven or podcast-driven. Then we see that the genres are different, so that we have platforms that have specialized in young adult and new adult content. So we have a younger audience, and on other platforms where we have a very strong focus on these genres like suspense, thriller, it's more a little bit the middle age group. But I think that's also an asset, that we really have an audience over all age groups. And we, from a publisher perspective, we try to target all these age groups on the platforms they are, or where they want to listen. So, yeah.
And Lasse, so for your perspective, you see a lot of what's going on in the Nordic countries and in other countries around Europe. Anything different here to share?
No, I think it's been said more or less already, but of course the consumption directly correlates to the business model of the services or the library. And we see that directly. For instance, if you have an all-you-can-read subscription, children's books are very popular, and backlist is very popular. Whereas if you have download markets, it's new titles that are selling, that are top of mind at the consumers.
And the listening habits of the Nordic countries are similar to Germany and elsewhere?
Yeah, no, I think they're more spread into the backlists. But in general, I think what's the difference is that approximately two-thirds of all books consumed in the total book markets are consumed as audiobooks.
And what's interesting about that, though, is you refer to those consumers as readers. That's a particularly important point to you. And Barbara's already mentioned the relationship of listening and reading and so forth. Expand on that for us.
Yeah, well, it's out of respect for our readers, which are listening to a book, but we essentially do not see any difference in listening to a book. You have to be as attentive to the story. The only thing you don't do is decode the letters, but otherwise there's no difference. And we see, because of the popularity of the audiobook, that more and more books are written directly for audio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we have to talk about AI and the role of AI in developing the marketplace here. And Barbara, so for you, explain for us what Audible's position is and where you're finding some real take-up in the marketplace as a result.
Yes, for sure. Well, it's a big topic. I think it's one of the biggest one here in this book fair, and then for sure as well for us. I would say it's a big opportunity and as well in a certain degree a challenge we have to manage. And it's on us as well to go through it, to deal with it, to make the best out of it. For us, we know as well that there's only really a very small portion of titles of ebooks available in audio. Let's say I can't really see the number. It's less than 3% of the ebooks are as well available in audiobooks. So there are still a big number, a big volume of titles which could potentially be an audiobook, where we could potentially use as well AI narrations. This could be a solution. What we want to do is for sure to see the big number and the small number, and maybe we can change a little bit. We just want to give you all a kind of option. It's really the idea of what kind of books we can bring to life together for the audience, for the customer. So it's coming really from the perspective what needs to be done, that we can broaden the offer. A broad offer is also more attractive than a small one to customers. And this is right now where we are working on, what we are doing. We are testing as well in some marketplaces. What is also important to us to know in this context very clearly, we are very deeply committed still, and we will stay to the human narration. It's for us absolutely key. 23, 24, we had also the highest volume of contracts with narrators. So this is us. We are premium audio storytelling, and we want to stay on that place. But nevertheless, it's not a neither nor, it's an and option to go into managed TTS or managed text-to-speech, managed IA narration, self-service productions. We also want to offer translation opportunities. And one thing as well, and then I'm silent again, as well, what's important to us in terms of our customers, transparency is key. We have to label very clearly when we talk here about an AI narration or not, or translation even though. So what we so far said and what we are doing is to say it first on the product detail page for sure. We are also mentioning this in the listening experience. So when you click start, you will also hear this is made by. Also in the production and in the metadata in all these fields, it's important for us. It's an option. It needs to be clearly communicated to the customers. It's an opportunity.
Yeah, and Anke, we were speaking earlier about just the labeling of AI,
Yeah.
and that what has happened is everything's being talked about as AI, but the real importance here is on the culture of innovation and technology that is going to drive change. It's not so much the particular tool.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier because I said to you, I think for us in audio, the talk about AI, it's nothing that makes us extremely nervous because audio has always been an innovative format and AI is just another innovation, but an important one. And for us at PRH, it's clear that, also in my opinion, publishing has always been a human-centric business, and I believe it will be one in the future as well, with or without AI. That's why I think it's important to make the best out of this innovative power. So to have a blending of the strength of the human and the machine, so to say. And for us, it's about how can these new innovative techniques enable our creatives. So what can we do with AI to give them more room to do what only a human can do, so to say. That doesn't mean that AI is only a threat, but it's important that we focus on the advantages, meaning like in pre or post-production, that you can be more efficient on the process side, or that you can just create more space for the creative part, because I think it's important, and it will be important that any audio production will have a connection to the listener. And this value proposition, that's our goal. That's what is important for us. And yeah, I only can strongly agree on that. We have, as a publisher and through the whole chain, the responsibility to make very clear towards our customers what they are buying, meaning to enable them to make an informed decision, and that's all about labeling. So, and I think that's important that we keep this in mind.
And Lasse Horner, at Saga Egmont, how is AI playing into the development of your strategy?
Well, of course, it's substantial because I agree that we, as a publisher, the only remaining space to move into is, of course, premium productions. Because if you have a standout title, then the cost for producing an outstanding audiobook isn't that big. You don't want to save costs there. But on C-list titles or B-list titles even, maybe you won't even go into producing an audiobook. But we will all be affected by the many indie publishers who certainly will start using AI tools to produce a lot of audiobooks. And that will, of course, influence the markets severely, because I think it will be just as good enough for many listeners.
Okay. And it's already come up about podcasting. We're looking here at the European market and how it's growing and the ways that it's sort of enlarging that listener community. For you, podcasts play what kind of a role?
I've never understood the difference between a podcast and an audiobook, basically. And nobody, I think, has really been able to explain it. We regard podcasts as non-fiction books, communicate in a different way than an ordinary book, and then audiobooks mainly for fiction and entertainment. So in that sense, podcasts is a great new thing, but basically it's just enlarging the possibilities of non-fiction you can do and tell in an engaging way to consumers. And we're very happy that many of the retailers are now also including podcasts in their offering, not only audiobooks, because the two formats belong together.
Right. And Barbara Kanaba, did your Audible Compass tell you anything about the relationship for podcast listening and audiobook listening?
For sure. Well, this podcast is as well in terms of the audio, or the Compass is the highest listening consumption. I'm not referring now to our service, so it's really what the survey is answering. In regards to us, and we see this also in the Compass, is that a podcast really could buy a kind of bridge to other formats and vice versa. So it's really people who are listening to podcasts are also open for audiobooks. We are differentiating here. So it's really a kind of bridge, and as well to bring more customers in to engage with audio content. We know, for example, when I talked about the consumption pattern, going to work, commuting, so maybe I have half an hour, I have 34 minutes. Now, I can easily listen on a podcast. So maybe it's in the morning, I would like to know something. I would like to be informed, entertained. A very nice niche category is, in terms of podcasts, also the edutainment. So I would like to learn, but as well a little bit entertained. So therefore, as well, we can use podcast for in this situation to get customers even though more into audio consumption. What is also important is a lot of people are selecting a piece of content by the subject, by the category. These are really the first two things they answered. And I apologize for all the authors. It's not the author. It's so far, it's the category, the subject, the narrator. And now it's interesting. So first, what kind of subject is interesting? True crime in Germany. Thriller mystery, we learned about this. True crime is still our most successful podcast over there. We have also a good one to fall asleep. So it's really, you can use podcast to bridge. It's a kind of crossover strategy to even broaden the group of customers, no matter what they are listening to. Whether it's podcast, it's an audiobook, it's a dramatization, a multicast thing, it's all connected.
And Anke Hoffman, so is that how you see it as an audiobook publisher, that podcasting really is, again, about expanding that culture of listening?
Yeah, for sure, because I have very little to add on what Barbara has said, because for me, it's not a competition between formats, it's more complementary. So the more people listen, the better for us, because it's good for the audio format as well, because people got trust in the format, they build listening habits, and for us it's also an entry format. So, and I think we should not think so much in formats, or it's more about the story, it's about the topic. The people choose the topic, and then they will easily go from a short form storytelling, a podcast, to long form, deep dive audiobooks, and that's why we see very positive effects on platforms who serve both formats, have a smooth transition between these two formats. So it's something I really can agree on.
Well, I want to thank you for a wonderful discussion, very rich indeed, lots of detail, and I appreciate our guest today from Berlin, Barbara Knaber with Audible, from Copenhagen, Lasse Korsman Horner from Saga Egmont, and from Munich, Dr. Anke Susanne Hoffmann from Penguin Random House. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.